Intesa Group, Bapak Nararya Sanggra Mawijaya Suprapto, Deputy Secretary General of ASEAN for Community and Corporate Affairs ASEAN Secretariat, and Ms. Mari Otoson, Co-Chair of Global Partnership for Effective Development Cooperation, GPEDC, Deputy Director General of Swedish International Development Cooperation Agency, SIDA. Thank you, Mr. Francisco Aguilera Aranda. You may return to your seat. To moderator and all panelists, please remain on stage and take your respective seats. Ladies and gentlemen, to start the thematic session, I would like to introduce our moderator, His Excellency Bapak Febrian A. Rudyard, Ambassador Extraordinary and Plenipotentiary and Permanent Representative of the Republic of Indonesia to the United Nations, the World Trade Organization, and other international organizations in Geneva since December 2021. Before his appointment in Geneva, Ambassador Rudyard served as Deputy Minister for Multilateral Cooperation at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Indonesia in Jakarta from 2017 to 2021. His Excellency, Bapak Febrian A. Rudyard, the stage is yours.
Thank you very much, and very good morning to all of you and also the speaker. It's really such a glad to be able to see again such a prominent speaker in the stage, and of course I would like to thank His Excellency Francisco Aguilera Aranda for the very enlightening speech and lesson learned that you have been able to provide it to for all us to be able to follow your footpath. And of course, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this session. We have come to the last day of our session today. As the importance of multi-stakeholder collaboration is always highlighted in many of meetings in the last 2 days, and I believe in this session we will discuss the role in promoting higher economic value at the regional level. This is a very good mantra, innovate to elevate. That I think not only to innovate to elevate in a global community, but also how our effort in bringing innovation to elevate the higher economic values also being trickling down to the regional level. This is the really big question, because I'm a true believer that the regional mechanism or regional capacity in its turn will have to contribute significantly to the strengthening of a global value chain. So we have a very good assemble of speakers today, and of course it's really very fortunate for us to have a very able speaker, and I don't want to spend much time to speak with you because they are the one who will be the superstar. So the first speaker on my list, I would like to invite my dear colleague from Geneva, Dr. Carlos Maria Correa. He is currently the Executive Director of the South Center. Carlos, welcome to Bali. I'm glad to see you be able to join us in this today. Carlos, I will go directly to the main course, not the appetizer. So I have a guiding question for you. Then I hope we can learn from your views. What is your view on the regional existing landscape regarding the value chain? And if it's possible, could you elaborate further on the strength and weakness and the key sector relevant to value chains? And what are the geopolitical implications of regional value chain for developing countries? I know you are heading the South Center, which we in G77 and China Group in Geneva, we consider you as our think tank. You are the one who provide us with many alternative positions. And last but not least, this is very pertinent with regard to your organization. How can the South Center help countries, especially the developing countries, navigate this dynamic? You have 10 minutes, Carlos. You have the floor.
Well, thank you very much, Ambassador. Thank you for the invitation again, for your kind words. It's a real pleasure for the South Center to participate in this meeting. So let me address first your question about the landscape of regional value chains. I will just make an introductory remark regarding how these regional value chains are created. And this remark reflects on the issue of the cost efficiency. Because even if, for instance, just to compare, if you have a neighbor, a good neighbor, close to your apartment or your house, this neighbor may not necessarily become your friend. And this is also a situation with suppliers in a region. The fact that you may have a potential supplier in a neighboring country does not mean that you will contact them and will engage in businesses with them, because these regional value chains are based on cost efficiency. So this means that what companies will look for is for those potential partners that can bring reduced cost. They will look for locations in which there is good connectivity, there is infrastructure, there are conditions that will ensure that reliability in terms of delivery of the goods, in terms of, for instance, custom time. So there are many factors that actually influence the extent to which regional value chains can be created or not. So therefore, this means that they will not emerge spontaneously in many cases, and then you need some concrete actions to be taken in order for these regional chain values to emerge. And one good example for this is the case of Asia. Asia is for sure the most advanced region in terms of global and regional value chains. As you know, in the area of clothing, in the area of footwear, in the area of travel goods, sporting goods, electronics, and electrical equipment, smartphones, TV, so on and so forth. But the proliferation of these regional value chains has been, to a great extent, the outcome of policy intervention. Let me just mention a few of them. In the first place, the ASEAN members made unilateral trade tariff reductions in the past in order to facilitate these value chains to be established. Secondly, many of the members of ASEAN also signed the WTO Information Technology Agreement in order to facilitate trade in relation to products which are covered by this agreement. Importantly also, these countries improved significantly custom clearance, including, for instance, establishing single window. And Singapore actually provided a good example for this. Singapore excelled in this respect. Also, when China's economic policies changed and opened up in 1992, this pushed a lot, as we know, these regional value chains, in particular for assembly, for components coming from East Asia and Southeast Asia. But interestingly, even if you look at Asia, you will see that all sub-regions do not perform in the same way. And then if you look at the situation of Central Asia, you will see that despite geographic, cultural, and historic closeness, there isn't a proliferation of regional value chains. These countries are more involved in global value chains. And then this is something that needs to be addressed on the basis of the right policies. Then if you continue to the landscape, if you go to another region, to Latin America and the Caribbean. So Latin America and the Caribbean has not performed as well as Asia in terms of regional value chains, and I will provide you some information to support this point. If we look, for instance, at the intra-regional foreign value of exports from Latin America, this value accounts for only 5%. So only 5% of the value which is exported is of intra-regional origin. This compares with Asia, where you have 18% of intra-regional foreign value in exports, and also with the European Union, where you have 24% of intra-regional foreign value in export. So this means that Latin America is not well positioned in terms of regional value chains. And one of the reasons for this, perhaps, is the fragmentation in Latin America, although there are some schemes for economic integration. Mercosur is one of them, the Andean Community is another one, CARICOM in the Caribbean is another one. But the fact that some of the countries in Latin America have signed free trade agreements with the European Union, on one side, for instance, the case of Colombia and Ecuador, or with the United States, as the case of also Chile. This means that there is a significant fragmentation within the region that does not favor the creation of regional value chains. So we move now to Africa, and there have been interesting studies recently made in relation to how to promote regional value chains in Africa. As we know, the new trade agreement can actually facilitate a lot this process. Interestingly, last year in November 2023, a meeting was organized by the Economic Commission of Africa precisely on this subject. And they did a very thorough analysis of the potential of developing regional value chains in Africa. And there are a number of findings were identified in this meeting. One of them is that there is a need to harmonize trade policies in Africa in order to achieve this objective. There is a significant improvement in connectivity and infrastructure which is needed. Custom time, for instance, reducing custom times. And there is a need, and this is a point I would like to stress quite strongly, there is a need of industrial policies. So these value chains can be created if the right industrial policies are established. As you know, now industrial policy has become also very popular again in developed countries, such as in the United States, European Union. At one point, they were demonized. These countries were saying, developing countries, you should not use industrial policies, just leave the markets to operate. But now developed countries are coming back, and certainly, in order to develop the region, in the case of Africa in particular, you need to implement the right industrial policies. And also one interesting and important conclusion in relation to Africa is the need to establish special economic zones that will facilitate the creation of these regional value chains. But there has been also observation that these special economic zones should not perform as military zones. They should not be isolated from the rest of the economy. They must be fully integrated. There have been also some studies, in particular by UNDP, identifying which are the sectors in which Africa could develop these regional value chains, and these identified sectors include automotives, leather products, cocoa, soya, textiles and apparel, pharmaceuticals, lithium, including lithium-ion batteries, and some other study undertaken by the International Trade Center indicates also baby foods, and this could be related to food security. So the potential is there, but a lot needs to be done. As I mentioned earlier, it's not just a spontaneous creation of value, these regional value chains, but there is a need of the right policies. So regarding, Ambassador, the geopolitical implication, just to conclude my comments on this, I think there are two perspectives on the geopolitical issues. One relates to the geopolitical changes which have been brought about by the war in Ukraine, by the situation in Palestine, but all these crises that going on, which have affected significantly global value chains. And also the US and China competition, or the launch by the United States of a strong trade war against China, to be more concrete. And the fact that this policy by the United States against China, which is aiming possibly stop China from continuously growing technologically and taking a more important role in the world economy. But this has actually, as we know, disrupted significantly the global chains and also regional value chains in Asia. And there has been a important shift of value addition from China to South Korea, to Thailand, to Vietnam, and also in some cases to Mexico. So this is a consequence, disruption due to geopolitical reasons. But there are other aspects about geopolitical decisions, and this relates to actions and measures that may be taken. I will refer in 1 minute and a half, I still have, to one important development in Asia, and this is the adoption of the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership. I understand that Indonesia, it entered into force in Indonesia in January of last year. So this economic agreement can have a major role in promoting regional value chains. And certainly is very important in terms of 30% of global GDP is accounted by the members of this RCEP, this agreement, and also 30% of the global population belong to this country. So there is a major role that this agreement can play in promoting regional value chains. There are other examples that can be mentioned in which the governments have set the platforms in order for these chains to perform. One of them is between Brazil and Argentina. In the case of the automotive sector, there has been an agreement that has allowed Brazil and Argentina to exchange components, parts, and produce cars that are exported from Argentina to Brazil and inversely. So how the South Center can help? The South Center provides policy advice. The South Center develops policy analysis. We publish a number of research papers, policy briefs, when we try to provide objective information about these issues. For instance, recently we produced a paper, an important study about the vaccines industry. In the vaccine, to produce a vaccine, you need about 90 or 100 components, and there is a major opportunity for regional cooperation for vaccine production. So the role of the South Center is to produce this research and to advise countries in order to take advantage of the opportunities that may be presented. Well, thank you very much again for your invitation.
Thank you very much, Carlos, and thank you so much for your support for our group. And of course, we're looking forward to work with you because we still have a design law treaty that will be negotiated in Riyadh, I think later on this year. Now, allow me to invite Professor Bambang Brojonegoro. Pak Bambang, welcome to the session. And Pak Bambang is currently the Professor of Economic of University of Indonesia and also Commissioner in several private companies in Indonesia. Pak Bambang, our participant is very curious to pick up your brain, especially on a couple of points, Pak Bambang. First, how do resource constraint, technological deficiencies, and reliance on raw commodity export challenge developing countries' participation in higher value segment? And Pak Bambang, what do you think the opportunity for developing countries to overcome these challenges, and how can public-private partnership be increased to foster innovation and technology? We have 10 minutes, Pak Bambang.
Okay. Thank you, Excellency. I still remember when I was still a student at economics department, and then I learned first about the dichotomy in the global between North and South, Northern Hemisphere, Southern Hemisphere. And of course, as a student in economics, my early question, my initial question, why the Northern Hemisphere consists of high income, advanced economy. The Southern Hemisphere, mostly low income, middle income economy, or so-called developing nation. Of course, because I was just at the beginning of the 4 years or 5 years at economics, I didn't have much information. I didn't have much knowledge at that time. So at that time, I came up with a very so-called silly conclusion. Maybe Northern is more advanced in terms of economic development than the Southern, because the Northern, for example, has 4 seasons. They have winter, so they have more drive to sustain, to survive. While in the South, because I'm Indonesian, so anything, there is no force to make us survive. We can grow anywhere in Indonesia and we can come up with food material. So that's a kind of silly conclusion that later, when I started to dig deeper into the economic development, then I found out about the curse of having resources. Because if you look at the global south, majority of global south are quite rich in terms of natural resources. So it's really a bless, right, for us in the global south. But the economics told us the bless could be easily become a curse. Why a curse? Because once we are rich, or once everybody knows that we are rich in natural resources, then everybody started to come to us to exploit our natural resources. And then they will use the basic theory of international trade, comparative advantage. If country A, the south country, is rich in the natural resources, while the north country is excellent in manufacturing, so let the country A selling their natural resources to country B in the south, in the north, and let the country B to produce any product that has higher value added from that natural resources and selling back to the country A. That's the theory of comparative advantage that we learned during our first course in international trade. And that happened for a long time. That's why from the bless suddenly becomes the curse. So the question from the Excellency is quite clear. How can we, basically handle the constraint? Not the constraint in terms of natural resources. We are basically quite rich in natural resources. We are rich in natural resources, but we are shortage of capital, shortage of technology, and shortage of human capital. So the answer to deal with this kind of curse, or how can the developing economy overcome the potential of curse, is how we are dealing with those three deficiencies. Number one, capital. Of course, when it comes to the capital, we really invite the FDI. So one of the most important resources for providing capital to exploit or to process our natural resources is to invite FDI. But of course, we have to be careful. Of course, in many global south, FDI already comes. And majority must come from advanced economy. Very logical. They have the money, they have the capital, they have the technology, they have the entrepreneurship, so they come for FDI in the global south. But of course, the global south as a host country needs to evaluate what kind of FDI that we really invite. We want FDI that not only exploiting our natural resources, we need also to, convince the FDI to create value added, to create some processing of our natural resources within the host country. And that's what Indonesia is doing right now. We have the program in Bahasa called hilirisasi, but in English we can call it downstreaming or creating value-added program that basically trying to invite more FDI. But for example, if you are coming for nickel, don't just exploiting our nickel mining, getting nickel ore, but more importantly, how can you invest more in developing the processing of nickel into ferronickel, or even further into stainless steel, or even further into battery EV. So that's the kind of way to attract more capital to support our natural resources. Number two, technological deficiency. It must happen in majority of the global south. While the key to become higher income economy, from low income to middle income into high income economy, is productivity. And productivity needs to be supported by the technology. Of course, we will be way behind when it comes to the innovation of the technology itself. But at least as a global south, we need to focus, number one, on technology adoption. And in the technology adoption, one of the most important things that we need to do as developing country, as a global south, is so-called reverse engineering. That's the kind of technology adoption that developing country really needs. I was lucky to be Minister of Research and Technology for 1.5 years until 2021. I learned a lot about reverse engineering, and I can understand relationship between research technology and economic development. Without reverse engineering, without proper technology adoption, we will always be dominated, or we will always tend to import the technology just like that from, of course, the developed economy. We need to have our own capability to understand and to utilize the technology through this reverse engineering process. Last but not least, the human capital. The history, economic development history, told us the success of Japan, the success of Korea, and lately the success of China not depend on natural resources. They are really depend on their human capability, human capital development. That's the key that many of the global south still missing, including Indonesia. So now, what should we do in order to get rid of this curse? So how can we maintain our natural resources as eternal bliss? Don't let it be a curse. So, of course, we have to invest. And then one of them, because now and the future, the technology that will dominate is the digital technology, like it or not. So we have to deal with that. So number one, for countries like Indonesia, for example, because we are largest archipelagic country in the world, we really need to invest for digital infrastructure. Make sure everybody, wherever they are in the country, they can be connected to the internet. The internet becomes the basic infrastructure that everybody needs today. Without internet, you are basically out of touch. So digital infrastructure is one. Number two, you have to invest more in R&D, research and development, especially on the one that I mentioned, technology adoption, reverse engineering. Again, the success of Korea, because they spend a lot for R&D, so they become the country with the highest R&D expenditure to the GDP ratio, 5%, roughly. They are really at the top in the world, not just among the Asia or the global south. So at the end, every country needs to focus their attention to invest more on R&D while preparing your human capital. So your human capital needs to be directed into what we know as STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math, and of course the digital technology itself. And of course, we need to really adopt all the kind of technology that we have to face in the future. We might not be the main producer of technology, but we have to make sure we are not just a nice customers for any digital product coming from the giant tech everywhere in the world. So that's the kind of thing that we really need to do. And of course, to do that is not just the government. To ask government focusing or spending more budget for R&D will be asking too much, because we know that budget everywhere in the world will be limited. So what can we do? We can follow, for example, what Sweden has been doing so well. Sweden is a small country in the Europe, but they are they can be called the most innovative country in the world. Why they are so innovative while their population is relatively small? Because they can really utilize, for example, collaboration among universities, the government, companies, and also people in order to create new innovation. And that kind of innovation will be only directed only for things related to the SDG, because they really want to fulfill SDG 2030, and they're using all the technology to achieve that by using public-private partnership, or what they call Sweden Innovation Partnership Program. And back to the Sweden as the most innovative country, if you're in your cell phone now, you have Spotify coming from the innovation from Sweden. Or in the past, before you know Zoom, you know Skype, it also come from the Sweden. So that's kind of thing that digital technology can help us. And again, innovation has to be in the back to support any kind of development in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor. Thank you. Thank you so much. And many pertinent points, including when you remind us about the old nostalgic sentiment about why there's a difference between northern country and southern country, because they have 4 seasons. So I still remember vividly. And when you mentioning about Swedish, I see that Mary is smiling very wide. So we're looking forward to listen from you as well. Now, allow me to invite Ibu Sinta Kamdani. She is currently the chairman of the Indonesian Employee Association, APindo, and also CEO of Sintesa Group. Selamat datang, Bu Sinta. It's been a while, I think, since the last WF in Davos that we met.
Yes.
And we kindly invite Bu Sinta to share your thought, Bu Sinta, on fostering collaborative growth for increasing higher economic value products in developing country. We will be very grateful, Bu, if you could share your perspective from the field. Discussing the promotion of higher economic value will not be complete without someone who works in the field. That is your strength. And Ibu Sinta will give, I believe, a broad portfolio across industrial products and consumer products. And what strategy have you found most effective for improving access to modern technology and productivity within this sector, especially in the context of Indonesia? You have the floor, Bu Sinta, for 10 minutes.
Yes, thank you very much, and thank you for this opportunity. Actually, today I'm wearing different hats, but also my Chamber of Commerce and Industry hat. So let me start by saying that we in business believe that there is no innovation of high economic value that can be created single-handedly by an economic actor. So just like raising a child, you need a whole village to continuously create an innovation with high economic value in the market. In a nutshell, I think there are 3 aspects to an innovation with high economic values: market relevance, commercial viability, and the novelty of the innovation itself. Each of these aspects corresponds to the different economic stakeholders. So, for example, market relevance, I think shaped by people or society and government as a regulator of what's allowed and not allowed to be consumed by society, and as demand creator through government procurement in the form of market demands or trends. Second, on the commercial viability, shaped by business, investors, and government, as also the climate regulator, who will define what will be workable as business activities. And thirdly, on the novelty of the innovation, I think shaped primarily by higher education institutions, companies in terms of R&D, spending, and capability, and government as a catalyst through regulation or public R&D spending, who also together define the I call it a powerhouse of innovation. As you can see, there are many economic actors involved in determining if we can have a high economic value innovation or not. And each actor should move within the parameter of influence to ensure that we can sustainably generate innovation with high economic value in Indonesia. So, government as a key enabling and influencing actor should ensure the suitable market barometer. That's the first one. The second, an enabling business environment for business to innovate and perform commercial activities on the innovation. And the third, there is an incentivizing, I want to underline incentivizing, environment as a catalyst for improving the innovation powerhouse and business to successfully commercialize the innovation, including through strict enforcement of patent or other forms of IPR productions. Now, business and investors should be willing to invest in R&D for their own business growth, should be able to determine if an innovation is commercially viable as a product or services, and should be willing to take reasonable risks. This is something that I think it's always the risk. In proportion, obviously, to the potential market gain to commercialize or market the innovation. Now, high education institutions should be able to produce high quality education, accountable R&D standard, and quality graduates who are capable of not only theorizing academically, but most importantly, to test and utilize the academic research capability to generate the innovation that are serving market concern or commercial demand trend in real life. And society as a whole also play the role that their participation in the economic activities, primarily through the job participation, productivity creation, purchasing power, understanding on the products they consume, and their conscious decision of purchasing goods or services available in the market. Now, all these actors should move in sync to make an economically successful innovation happens. Bearing in mind that contribution of each actor are essential for every other actor to do their function, as I explained before. Only then we can have a sustainable circular motion in which economic activities drives innovation, and innovation can in turn propel on the economic activities higher to just like what we see in developing countries. I mean, obviously Sweden is a good example, Germany, Japan, many other countries. And I think this circular motion between innovation and economic activity is also something that we as association and Chamber of Commerce does. And we think that the multi-stakeholder engagement are crucial in ensuring that there is this sync across economic actors to create and keep the economic of innovation in motion. We should never work in silo and without understanding and assisting what each other is doing, without coordinating the efforts, and without being given a proper environment, it will be very difficult for us in Indonesia to have high value economy through innovation. Now, as the chamber, we play a pivotal role in fostering this and promoting economic development. There are a few things that I would like to share. First, I think on advocacy, we definitely advocate policy that support business growth and competitiveness. We also facilitate partnership and business matching between business, government, and research institution. Many of the companies work with many of the academia and university. We have a pentahelix collaboration. And also capacity building. They are, as a business organization, we provide capacity building for all our members, and also we link to many of the multilateral agencies that can provide support capacity building. And obviously, I want to highlight also the networking aspect. I think in many cases where we represent businesses in many forums, ASEAN, APEC, B20, all this, what we are trying to do is no longer discussing about policy recommendation, but also coming out with concrete legacy projects. And I would like to touch this because I think it's important that we businesses also can emphasize the outcome that can create by all this collaboration. So for example, on digitalization, we have, as you know, ASEAN has a DEFA on the digitalization framework agreement. But I think on the business side, we have also worked on how to support government in coming out with projects that are in line with a number of policy highlights that the government are working on. And I think this, for example, during ASEAN time legacy, we have created the ASEAN Alliance on Carbon. This is all on the regional level that has continued on. Also on, we have done work together on how we can provide the digital transformation, we can do the energy transition and many of the those aspects. But I want to end by a number of things. I think one, while we are looking on how to bring more cooperation, we are also looking in how Indonesia can be part of the regional value chain. Because at the end of the day, on the industrial level, I think this is the most crucial part. So bringing our products in the supply chain is key. But second, when we talk about the higher innovation and digitalization, this is something that I experienced as well in our organization. We have gone, you know, more from now automation, with digitalization, we're talking about AI, we're talking about Internet of Things. At the end of the day, we need to understand that how digitalization will also impact the human capital development. I think this is very key when we talk about higher innovation and economic values. Because why? Because at the end of the day, for Indonesia, while we know that we are going into the future of work, we also understand that creation of jobs is also very important. And therefore, I think these are some of the issues that Indonesia needs to pay attention. While we are bringing more technology, more development and automation are needed, but on the other hand, we also need to understand how will this impact jobs. So I wanted to really, I think, highlight in many of the work that companies are doing at the moment, where we are looking into a more modern technology and encompassing e-commerce and so forth. We need to bring, we have to remember on the inclusivity aspect. And therefore, we always look at Indonesia when we talk about the digital transformation of two aspects. One is the affordability and accessibility. And I think when we talk about digitalization, infrastructure is important, but I think the literacy aspect is also very important. So I think these are all encompasses while we want to move forward higher level of the supply chain. We also need to understand that the affordability and accessibility are two important key aspects. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bu Sinta. Thank you for bringing up a couple of very pertinent points in your briefing. And now I would like to invite Ms. Mary Otsoson. Ms. Mary Ottoson is a co-chair of the Global Partnership for Effective Development Cooperation and Deputy Director General of the Swedish International Development Cooperation or Agency, SIDA, and you also have been served in Vietnam as the Deputy Head of Mission of Embassy of Sweden in Hanoi. Welcome to Bali, Mary. And it's been a while since GPDC meeting in Geneva with you back in 2022, I believe. And your presence in Bali will truly enrich our discussion, especially from a Swedish perspective and development partner. And you are expected to share your thought on the best practices in public-private partnership for improving economic in developing countries. As a development partner, if you could enlighten us with how SIDA public-private development partnerships initiative leverage the private sector's resource skills and innovative solution in developing countries. And also in implementing PPDPs, what are the key elements that you think to be served as successfully enabling well-functioning, inclusive and sustainable market, value chain or business models? I give the floor to you. You have the floor.
Thank you very much. First of all, I would like to thank our Indonesian host for inviting me here today. And I was really happy and pleased to go here to Indonesia and to Bali. And I must admit that right now I am super happy to be here after having listened to my previous speaker who acknowledged the important role of Sweden and the way we are working with innovations. Let me say, first of all, that when it comes to GPEDC, if you're not familiar with that, I would like to say that GPEDC is the primary platform that we have for driving development effectiveness. But it is also about building an impactful partnership for the SDGs, which is very much needed today when we are so clearly off track with the SDGs. And one very short answer to the question given to me would actually be to highlight the importance of partnerships and innovation, but I will elaborate a little bit more on both of them. But it is very important for us, and when I talk with my Swedish hat on, that acknowledge the important role that private sector plays. And they are essential when it comes for creating a livelihood, for creating livelihood opportunities, as well as sustainable societies. But also coming from CEDA development partners, and I'm super proud of all the work that we are doing, but having said that, we all know that ODA today needs to be looked at differently. And today we need to make sure that we can use ODA in a smarter way so we can also increase other catalytical funding, which is so much needed to close the gap when it comes to the SDGs. And to say a few words also about what we are doing in the field of the private finance for sustainable development and the SDG finance. We have developed different approaches and instruments, but I think that the most important thing is actually to be innovative, to be brave, and also to learn from your mistakes. We have different instruments. We have the PPDPs, we have a very flexible guarantee instrument, we have challenge funds, and we also work in close partnership with many different actors. But then to say a few words about PPDPs, that is something that we then work in close cooperation with other private and public partners, and we share the cost between us. And looking at the principal objective, sometimes I've been asked, what is your primary objective when you're doing PPDPs? But actually, the primary objective is the same as in any other development intervention. We're always looking at the development impact of a specific initiative. But what we see is that sometimes when the private sector reach out to us, they do that because they want to reach scale, or they have also seen that they are maybe need to work outside of their scope of their normal business operation, and then they see that we can play a role in this. And from our aspect, we believe that the private partnership is very good also, and we have seen good results and sometimes even better results when it comes to the sustainability issue. And of course, for us, it's important to focus on results at all times, and by producing and working jointly on PPDPs, that is one way, a very good way of doing that. But I would also like to mention that we have a very flexible guarantee instrument. We do not have the time to dig into that right now, but I want to say that looking back to what we did with guarantees in 2023, we saw that every ODA used for subsidies has actually unlocked 100 times the ODA used in available lending. So I think that is also one very good example of how we work when it comes to mobilize other fundings. And then I also want to talk about partnership with investors. If we go back to 2016, we had a meeting with many important CEOs in Sweden. They were the CEOs of the state pension funds of different insurance companies. They were also some of the largest asset managers in Sweden. And we did have a discussion with them on how they saw their role when it came to the SDGs. 6 months later, we, together with CEOs, formed a partnership which is called the Swedish Investors for Sustainable Development. And their mission was to advance sustainable development. And as a result, they have actually produced many different outcomes since then. We now have indicators for measuring, as well as evaluating investing in gender. We have guidance for corporate governance in decent work and as well as human rights in food supply sector. We also have a set of questions to interrogate companies on their risks for being involved in corruption, only to name a few. And then a few years later, this platform was also an inspiration to the UN. So another platform or a partnership was created, but at the global level, and then maybe you can guess what the name would be then. The name is then the Global Investors for Sustainable Investors, where actually also the UN Secretary himself, General himself, played a very important role as a convener. And this partnership now has more than 30 of the world's largest investors, banks, asset owners, as well as a few companies. So I think that is also very important to make sure that we can always work in close partnership and be innovative. But then I would also like to say a few words about what key elements do we see as important where development cooperation in a broad sense can also contribute towards creating a conducive investment environment. So once again, innovation and an openness to learn from experience. If we do that, we see that best practices can really accelerate progress, and we have good examples also when it comes to green and digital commerce. But I would also like to see that development cooperation, including a South-South triangle cooperation, is also something that can play an important role here. And that is also something that I've been heard about becoming more and more also important during the 2 days that I have been here. And also by having a broad long-term investment in capacity building and system strengthening, that is also something that can contribute to an enhanced governance and increased predictability, which then would of course lead to a lower risk. And now comes something that I would really like to emphasize, and that is that I think there is a need for a very, very strong focus on anti-corruption. And not only to address it, but really also to make sure that we at all times combat all types of corruption, all types of illicit financial flows, tax evasions and avoidance, which significantly hampers all functioning markets. And I can't emphasize enough how important that is to Sweden and to me, because we really want to achieve sustainable results. But another way of contributing towards a conductive and conducive investment environment is by strengthening women's economic empowerment. And by doing that, you will not only promote women's rights, it will also contribute to thriving markets, so it's really good for everyone. But then going back a little bit to PPDPs, what do we do? And I will say a few words about the specific aspect and principles that we assess when working with, on private PPDPs. The first one is actually about additionality. For us, it means that when we are getting involved, it should trigger a pro-poor development impact. That means that that is something that should not have emerged, it should not have happened without SIDA. So it has to show a development, must have a development additionality. But it could also have a financial additionality, and that means that without SIDA's involvement, it means that this would not have enabled a development that would not have taken place at the same scale and or without SIDA. But we are also assessing the core businesses, trying to make sure that SIDA's overall objective to focus on poverty reduction overlaps and very well with the company's core business objective. And then, of course, since this is a partnership, it should also always be based on a risk and cost sharing between SIDA and the partnering private sector actor. And it should also have, of course, a joint ownership of the project and the sustainable results it is set out to achieve. So to wrap up, I just want to say also that for Sweden, we are focusing and spending a lot of time now in the preparation for the Finance for Development meeting taking place next year. And we have put also a lot of time and effort on the FFD agenda in our day-to-day work at SIDA. It is clear that we need to mobilize more resources for development, and that is also one of our top priorities when it comes for SIDA being a development agency, along with another top priority, which is development effectiveness. And when I talk about these two agendas, I would like to emphasize that to us, both Sweden and also to GPDC, these two agendas are seen as ensuring and complementing one another. So we don't see that one or the other is more important than the other. Both are needed, and both are needed in order for us to ensure that we can have a sustainable and long-term finance for sustainable development. So finally, I would like to say one final word about GPDC. We are so proud of being the co-chair of GPDC together with Indonesia and two other co-chairs. It is a great opportunity because it gathers all development actors, including the UN, the MDBs, the private sector, civil society, and all others. And now, in the run-up to the 4th Finance for Development Conference to take place next year, the GPDC will also advocate for the need to ensure effectiveness and quality and long-term impacts of all times of partnership. And if you're interested in knowing more about that, you're more than welcome to attend our side event later on this afternoon. So with that, I would like to thank you.
Thank you very much, Mary. Thank you very much for sharing with us a couple of pertinent points that can be used as a food for thought for our today discussion. Now, finally, we're coming to our last panelist, Mr. Nararia Suprapto. Mr. Nararia Suprapto, currently the Deputy Secretary General of ASEAN for Community and Corporate Affairs. He has over 20 years of experience across a government, intergovernment organization, private sector, and association. Selamat datang, Pak Nara. With your vast experience in public policy and intergovernmental organization, I hope you can share with us, focusing on multi-stakeholder partnership to enable developing countries in exporting higher value product. I have a specific question for Pak Nara. How ASEAN envision its participation in the global value chain, and what strategies should be implemented to achieve the robust and resilient regional value chains amidst while anticipating the risk of global shock? You have the floor, Pak Nara.
Thank you. Thank you. First of all, I'd like to thank the organizer for inviting me to this session. And, I'm really happy to be among old friends, mentors, and people I see around the room that have been much part on the contribution of the ASEAN vision and, integration of economic cooperation largely. My talk will be in 4 sessions. Let me just start with the first one. This is a little bit of promotion of the region. Since 1967, ASEAN has come a long way. And if I just fast forward up till today, I'm happy to share that, the region is now today the 5th largest economy in the world. We have a GDP of about $3.8 trillion. An economic growth that is projected to be 4.6 in 2024, with a global trade of 3.6 trillion. Now, intra-ASEAN trade has leveled to 21.5%, with a foreign direct investment of 200 billion United States dollars. Now, how did we accomplish throughout the years? There are many initiatives, certainly many initiatives, but earlier it was called out that one of the prominent development was relating to custom procedures. And we have the so-called ASEAN windows that integrate the national single windows of ASEAN member countries. And this has facilitated a lot of business trading activities, evidently. You know, a cost saving about $150 million. That has been the number that we have available. And of course, there's so many initiatives related to the ASEAN Trade in Goods Agreement, ATIGA, and the ASEAN Trade in Services Agreement. Yesterday, I whipped up a couple of data relating to our infrastructure. I just learned that the region, ASEAN, we have as many as 63 international airports and 491 international seaports. This is a huge and vast development, you know, for the past 30 years or so. Now, entering into my second topic is how is ASEAN integrating its regional value chain into the global value chain? Now, historically, ASEAN has been developing cooperation with its so-called external partners. The external partners, they come in three. One is dialogue partners, sectoral as well as development partners. Now, evidently, in the work that we do, we address all the three pillars. It is political, economic, as well as social. Now, in that integration process, many of the topics that we address are often supported, in fact, largely supported by our so-called external partners. Today, we are making an expansion, an upgrade. For instance, we are negotiating with the two largest economies, one which is China and the other one is India. And at the same time, we're putting in place the regional economic, the RCEP, sorry, the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership. This will involve the 10 ASEAN countries, including Australia, China, Japan, and Korea, making it one of the largest trading region in the world. Now, if I enter into the third phase of my presentation, the ASEAN vision will be concluding in 2025. We will be moving into a next phase where discussion is what do we do propose this next year up till 2045. Now, a lot of things are being upgraded, and such upgrade will include, as earlier mentioned by Ibu Shinta, we have the ASEAN Digital Economic Framework. According to the Boston Consulting Group, this is going to be a formidable growth where the economy is expected to reach up till 2 trillion by 2030. We also have, we cannot neglect the fact that in our upgrade on developing this post-Vision 2025 is on the fact of carbon neutrality, where we're also developing a framework for circular economy, as well as the blue economy. Everything will be upgraded, including, like for instance, work on the ASEAN Sustainable Aviation Action Plan, which is to drive sustainable aviation growth, starting from the area of sustainable aviation fuel. Now we will also, being a maritime region, very important to develop the so-called ASEAN Green Ship Strategy. Now, if I come into the last part of my presentation, where we're talking about the multi-stakeholders, ASEAN has so-called 80 entities. Those entities include the parliamentary and judiciaries. They include the think tanks as well as the academics. They include the civil society organizations. We have the business organizations. Now they each and play their own role, and they have a mechanics within the ASEAN system. Like for instance, the ASEAN Interparliamentary organizations, they help to support in engaging with the legislator about why we do the certain initiative that we do and adopt the vision at the ASEAN level. That needs a lot of education, and they help us on that front. Evidently, with the academics, many of them are engaged within the ASEAN context to provide and present many of their academic studies. And this is where the areas on inclusivity, on sustainability are often derived from many of these studies. When we talk about the civil society organization, they are largely in the scope of the social and cultural pillar. And we're talking about many of the, like Ibu Shinta also mentioned, the inclusive and diversity, back also to the economic areas. On the business organizations, we have 16 sectoral businesses, and they range from iron and steel, shipping, port management, banking, insurance, transport, and so forth. But one of the prominent one is, of course, the ASEAN Business Advisory Council. Last year, when Indonesia was assuming the chairmanship of ASEAN, they launched a very, very successful ASEAN Business and Investment Summit, where many of the topics that were addressed were very relevant to what's next within ASEAN. For instance, in addressing the concerns of the small and medium enterprises. Pa Arshad earlier, before this panel, was talking about the QR code. This might sound like a simple initiative, that is true, but this will have a lot of positive impacts, especially for the SMEs, especially noting that being the majority in the ASEAN region, they also contribute to 85% of employment for ASEAN. And last but not least, there are, of course, the ASEAN centers. The ASEAN centers are established by our external partners that promotes largely in the three pillars that I was referring to: political security, economic, as well as social. And, on that front in itself, they help within their capacity to help and engage our external partners. So when I'm referring to the business sector, for instance, it's not only about within the ASEAN region, but also making the connection. For instance, I think it was last week where there was the ASEAN-Australia Business Council conference that was conducted in Sydney. And such avenue talks about exactly the multi-stakeholder engagement and relationship that we have in ASEAN with the view to develop the policy development for the ASEAN Vision 2020. And to my last and fifth part, there's none. I'd like to thank you for your kind attention. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Pak Nara. Thank you very much for your comprehensive yet succinct explanation. Now, I think it was great having diverse perspective and insight from our excellent and capable panelists. But I think I will not do justice if I'm not giving the opportunity for the participant to pose the question or comment to those speakers. I now open the forum for the Q&A session. Given the time that we have, which only 10 minutes, I believe that maximum I can accommodate up to 3 participants who would like to pose question. And please raise your hand, mention your name and your affiliation and your question. The floor is open. I see there are 2 participants from the left side. And is there any? 3? Yes. Okay, please. Ladies in the middle, and then we go to the left. Oh, Ibu sudah pegang? Yeah, please. Yeah, silakan.
Okay, thank you. I am Dante Rigmalia from the National Commission on Disabilities of the Republic of Indonesia. It is very interesting when we discuss how to innovate to elevate the multi-stakeholder partnership to promote higher economic value. As Pak Bambang mentioned it, that there are 3 things we can do to maintain natural resources to be internal blessing, including digital infrastructure, research and development, and collaboration. We would like to know how do you think we can elevate the multi-stakeholders partnership so persons with disabilities can participate actively. We, the National Commission on Disabilities of the Republic of Indonesia, monitors that persons with disabilities work mostly in the informal work. Due to the economic challenges, as we have known, many persons of disabilities live in poverty. They have limited access to the internet, although it was mentioned just now that the productivity is supported by technology. We also have limited research on the area of disability, and much of the research are not used in making regulation. So I would like to hear how can we innovate to elevate the promote higher economic value, which also include persons with disabilities. Thank you.
Thank you. Second participant, please. Yes. We start from the left. Okay.
Thank you so much. I have a question for all speakers, but my questions are actually triggered by explanation by Mr. Carlos Maria Correa and Pak Bambang. Oh, okay. My name is Desi. I'm from Bappenas. Okay. What challenge will global integration effort face with the recent comeback of industrial policy, particularly in terms of its impact on developing countries? And what do you think the trend of the adapting the policies will be sustained for a long time, shaping a new normal, or is it just a response to the recent series of multiple shocks since COVID-19? What do you think the impact on overall economic efficiency? And the industrial policy is also come back with the friendshoring trend. What impact do you think the recent trend of friendshoring and industrial policy will have on global partnership and innovation? Thank you.
Thank you. And the last participant, please.
Thank you, Excellencies. My name is Maharani, also from Bappenas. In terms of the ASEAN perspective, most of the ASEAN countries, we have like the same resource availability, especially the natural resources. So instead of creating more cooperations and also collaborations and co-creations among countries, I think most of the ASEAN countries are like competing each other. So what's the solutions for this, and how can the ASEAN countries put leverage into higher economic value, especially in regional level and also in the global level? Thank you.
Thank you. So I believe that question number 1, 2, and 3 was the first question was for Pak Bambang, and then second maybe Pak Bambang and Carlos. You can address that question. And last question, I think it's more like Pak Nara, but then I will give other speaker if you want to respond that. You have the floor, Pak Bambang. Maybe you can wrap up in one time.
I think the emergence of digital technology is a great opportunity to give basically equal access to everybody. Of course, with your concern on the disability group, then for me at least, digital technology is the solution. So anybody with or without constraint can participate in economic development. And if maybe others, including us, for example, do not have any issue to come to the work and to do anything more physically, but of course, people with some constraint, like disability, still can do their function, and they can contribute most through the digital technology. It means it opens the possibility, business opportunity, to create digital platform that will enable anybody to do something without too much restricted by the physical condition, and we don't have really care so much about the distance, about where you are, because now is a digital trend, and certainly digital platform is a very good opportunity for developing economy. And then on a digital platform, of course, we need to direct the digital business into something that becomes our most urgent needs. For example, Indonesia needs more productivity in agriculture. Then we should empower everybody to find a solution to increase agriculture productivity through digital platform. And that has been successful in other parts of the world, especially on the advanced economy, that they do not have, access human resources to work in agriculture, but they can still do the high productivity agriculture through the help of the digital platform. So that's the opportunity. And of course, digital access, internet infrastructure will be the key, to make sure everybody can access digital platform, and everybody with the restriction can still perform their best in terms of their individual capability. On the second question, I think the question is more on the friendshoring of the investment. I would say that now WTO will have very tough job in the near future, because after COVID, as you rightly mentioned, some of advanced economy trying to implement what they call quote unquote industrial policy, or they can also call it Inflation Reduction Act, because the high inflation happening after the COVID. But of course, this is another kind of protection. And of course, with this kind of protection, WTO will be really in the hot seat. How can WTO still perform, the borderless global economy with the challenge coming from the major player in the economy, in the global trade itself, which is developed economy that trying to protect many things. And of course, we have to be blunt that how we can, as a global south, how we can overcome the potential negative effect coming from the political tension between US and China. This is not really political tension, this is more business tension, more on a digital technology tension. So I think this is the tough job that WTO needs to do in order to, of course, to show to everybody that WTO still exists and WTO still can perform the free trade for everybody. Last but not least, on the ASEAN, I like to give one very good example on how ASEAN economic transaction will really help each individual ASEAN economy itself. So Indonesia now becoming one of the Toyota producer. Okay, so Indonesia already export quite significant amount of four-wheelers to different parts of the world, and the highest and so-called the biggest importer of Indonesian Toyota production is Philippines, another ASEAN countries. And interesting thing, what kind of Toyota car that Philippines imported from Indonesia is not the type of Toyota that you can see in Tokyo, in New York, or in Europe. It is the Toyota type that you can only see in Indonesia. And because Indonesian market and Philippine market have some kind of similarity, that the Indonesian-based Toyota type now become the best seller in Philippines, because our characteristics are the same. So it means we know very well ASEAN market, and ASEAN could be the help for us, for everybody to have our economy moving on. Thank you.
Thank you, Pak Bambang. Thank you for reminding W2 as well that they will be in the hot seat. Because I believe with all the situation that we face in WTO with this functioning of appellate body, there will be right challenges, and I think it should encourage WTO to do their best to revitalize themselves. Now, I would like to move to Carlos.
Well, thank you, Ambassador, and thank you for the question. Really, you have made an important question, has already been responded here. Certainly, as it was mentioned, after COVID-19, and because of this China and United States tension in particular, there has been a comeback of industrial policy in developed countries, which actually constitute, as was mentioned, protectionist policies. In the case of the United States, for instance, an act has been adopted that provides more than $50 billion in subsidies in order to support the semiconductor industry. And this is in the context of this competition with China, because they want to keep innovating and prevent China from becoming a leader in this field. In the case of Europe, you also have new industrial policies. For instance, during the COVID-19, Europe realized that a significant part of the medicines and the active ingredients for the medicines were coming from China, and the pharmaceutical products were coming from India. And then they realized that they were not self-sufficient in the area of pharmaceutical products. Then there is a new policy to reshore production in Europe in relation to pharmaceuticals. So this is what is taking place. So one question is the extent to which these policies are compliant with the WTO rules, and this is a major issue, and the ambassador here will have to take care of this issue. But at the same time, I want to stress that this should not mean that all industrial policies are to be condemned. Industrial policy is a very important tool for developing countries. Just remember that this was the way in which Japan actually did develop. Japan, for instance, adopted in 1950s a law in order to give priority to production of electronics. That was a major vision. Look at the economic growth of South Korea. It was led by industrial policy. So industrial policy needs to have a room, a legitimate rule in the context of WTO, for instance, to decide where innovation is to take place, where reverse engineering needs to take place. And I would like to emphasize that also reverse engineering is a legitimate manner of getting technologies or of innovation, because sometimes it is said, it is thought, imitation, reverse engineering is out of the law. This is not true. You can do even within the intellectual property system as it stays today. Reverse engineering, in fact, United States industrial development took place on the basis just copying technologies from the United Kingdom. And this was a state policy. This was promoted by the government at that place. So it's important to take industrial policy as a major issue, as a major component of the range of policies for development in Global South, taking into account, of course, the rule of WTO. We should not be such that will exclude the possibility for developing countries to use that policy space. It is very important to keep that policy space for industrial policy. Thank you.
Thank you, Carlos. Thank you for reminding us about the importance of industrial policy. In the other forum, which is maybe a bit distant with regard to the issue they're discussing on the Human Rights Council, they talk about right to development. And this is supposed to be one of the right basic of human rights. And I think if we connect with the idea of industrial policy, this is a right to development of every nation to have their industrial policy. Thank you so much. And I would like to go to Bapak Nara to say something on this issue of ASEAN. You have the floor, Bapak Nara.
First of all, very quickly on the disability. You know, we have the ASEAN Disability Forum where you engage and provide the advocacy support. But what I'd like to say here perhaps is something that I personally experienced. And my personal experience in, engagement with a group, I learned that I once took an activity from the disabled group going to the office, where they have to take the MRT, the stairs, and everything like that. And I found that it was very difficult from you to go end to end. And then the moment you go into the workplace, I mean, an education perhaps it will be very helpful to understand, the infrastructural needs, of the disabled groups. Because I learned that newly myself, between the blind and the deaf and the mute, the needs are different in terms of the, let's just say, the technology, the office equipment that you require. Those practical inputs, I think, will be helpful. I hope I answered that question. I don't know if there was a last one. That was it? Yeah, thank you, Pak.
Thank you, Pak Nara. And I give the floor to Mary, if you want to say something as your closing statement. Thank you.
Let me just add two things. That I really like what Mr. Bambang said about digitalization. I think that is a golden opportunity for everyone. And from a Swedish perspective, we are also heavily involved in the Global Digital Compact at the global level. But in addition to that, we are now also in the process of approving a new strategy for SIDA when it comes to digitalization. And it comes with huge possibility, but it also comes with some challenges if used wrongly. So that I think it's responsible that we also need to take as being a development partner. But then I also wanted to add that we will have a new strategy approved by the government in the near future, which is about providing support to civil society worldwide. And that, I don't know if that's an answer to the question raised beforehand, but that will be opening to small NGOs worldwide. So you can look at our webpage for more information about in the near future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mary. And I think this was the last speaker in our session, and Ibu Sinta has to rush to the airport to catch her flight. And ladies and gentlemen, as we bring the session to a close, let me give some notes as a takeaway from this discussion. It is evident that advancing higher economic value at the regional level requires a coordinated approach that integrates innovation, strategic investment, and strong multi-stakeholder partnership. The success of regional value chains depend on cost efficiency, robust infrastructure, and well-designed policy. However, for the Global South to overcome challenges like capital shortages, technological gaps, and human capital deficiencies, there is a critical need for strategic investment, particularly those that add value to local resources and drive sustainable development. Aligning market relevance, commercial viability, and innovation is essential for fostering economic growth. This alignment will require the collaboration of government, businesses, and academia to ensure that digital transformation and technological advancement positively impact job creation and regional integration into global value chains. On the other hand, ASEAN serves as a model of how regional collaboration can be effectively managed through dialogue and development partnership. With initiatives like ASEAN Digital Economic Framework and effort towards carbon neutrality, ASEAN demonstrates the power of regional connectivity and shared vision. And the collaboration with various stakeholders, including academia, civil society, business sector, will further strengthen this framework, fostering innovation and economic resilience. In conclusion, the insight shared by the panelists today underscore the importance of strengthening multi-stakeholder partnership, investing in innovation, and strategically positioning our efforts to elevate regional economies. By doing so, we can ensure that all regions, particularly the Global South, are well positioned to thrive in the global marketplace. This is the takeaway that I can have. I would like to invite you to round applause for the very able panelists of our session today. And thank you for your valuable contribution and for making the discussion a success. And I close the discussion session. Thank you so much. I give it to the MC.
Thank you, moderator and panelists, for the insightful discussion. You may return to your seats. Ladies and gentlemen, we will have a lunch break and we'll start the third session with the theme Connecting the South, Enhancing Logistic Connectivity to Support Trade in Developing Countries at 1:30 p.m. Thank you and see you soon.